And first this morning, winter is coming, apparently, to Europe, with an estimated 190,000 troops now surrounding Ukraine and the Russian and Belarusian forces conducting joint exercises near Belarus's border with Ukraine. The threat of a Russian invasion and war in Europe is intensifying this morning. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton sits on the Senate Armed Services, Intelligence, and Judiciary Committees, and he joins me now. Senator, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, Maria.
Are you expecting an invasion? And if so, what should the U.S.'s response look like?
Regrettably, Maria, I do expect Vladimir Putin will invade Ukraine. I think it could come in a matter of days, if not a matter of hours. As you said, he has almost 200,000 troops on Ukraine's border. That's almost half of his armed forces. They've started stockpiling field hospital supplies and blood on the border of Ukraine. I can tell you, as someone who's planned some military exercises in my life, you don't usually stockpile blood for an exercise. The news overnight is that the Belarusian president and Vladimir Putin have announced they're going to extend these so-called exercises in Belarus past today, their scheduled ending point. They were really nothing more than classic Russian camouflage and deception designed to give a reason for this massive buildup. Unfortunately, President Biden has once again put us on the back foot and ceded the initiative to Vladimir Putin. I thought the Ukrainian president put it very well yesterday in a speech in which he said if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are convinced that Vladimir Putin is prepared to invade, what are they waiting for? Why are they not imposing sanctions now? Why are they not at least announcing the kind of sanctions they will impose, the kind of sanctions I've been calling for months as the only possible deterrent to Vladimir Putin? But unfortunately, it looks like the president is simply going to wait until Russia decides to go for the jugular in Ukraine and then probably announce half measures that will not have that kind of effect on Vladimir Putin.
So what kind of sanctions would those be, whether it be right now, since everyone seems to believe that this is imminent, now that the Beijing Olympics are over, maybe that also opens the door for Putin. I know that Mario Draghi was saying we should not touch the energy situation in Russia as it relates to sanction. Then what do we have? What's our leverage?
Well, Maria, what the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi said last night was disgraceful, that we shouldn't impose sanctions on the Russian energy sector. That's one of the most effective sanctions we can impose on Russia. But it's singing from the same hymnal that the German Chancellor has sung from as well. Too many of these European nations have made themselves beholden to Russian gas, and therefore Russia has leverage over them. If we wanted to truly punish Russia for invading Ukraine, and maybe as important, if we want to send a signal to China about what would happen were they to invade Taiwan in the months or years ahead, it's obvious the kind of sanctions we should impose. We should sanction Russian oil. We should sanction their minerals and their mining sector. We should sanction their biggest banks. We should impose secondary dollar sanctions on them as well. We should remove them from the international financial system. That would send a signal to China that we mean business and that there will be severe consequences if they attempt in Taiwan in the months or years ahead what Vladimir Putin is on the verge of doing in Ukraine.
Well, it's an interesting point that you make, because I was going to bring up why there are 8 of Russia's largest companies, and by the way, they're already sanctioned by the United States for the 2014 invasion. 4 of them are also on the Commerce Department's entity list. They're still being held in investment portfolios of scores of millions of unwitting Americans. Why are we funding Russia's strength by investing in these companies? As we look at a map of the Russian forces around Ukraine, they're surrounding Ukraine and obviously set up shop in Belarus, which is a direct line to the capital of Kyiv.
Maria, a lot of this goes back to the very weak response that President Obama had 8 years ago to the invasion of Crimea and then eastern Ukraine, which signaled to Vladimir Putin. As President Biden's concessions and weakness over the last year on things like the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline or the Colonial Pipeline hack or the one-sided extension of the nuclear arms control agreement we have with Russia signaled to Vladimir Putin once again that President Biden was not up to the task of deterring him. I mean, isn't it curious, Maria, that the last time we had a Democratic president, Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine. Now we have a Democratic president, and Vladimir Putin is on the verge of invading Ukraine. But for 4 years, when we had a Republican president, who Democrats like Joe Biden accused of being in Vladimir Putin's pocket, for some reason, Vladimir Putin didn't invade Ukraine. It's because the only way to confront aggressive autocrats like Putin or Xi Jinping is to show strength from the very beginning. That's the way to deter the kind of conflict that is likely about to happen in Ukraine.
So do you think that the administration is considering sanctioning in terms of the energy business in Russia? I mean, I understand that he's making $1 billion a day right now on oil, given where the price of oil is. Give us your takes on the impact of all of this, including cyber activity. I know you're expecting cyber attacks as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think the administration will impose those kind of severe sanctions. They've even signaled that they're not going to impose them, which again is effectively encouraging Vladimir Putin to take action, because he knows that the sanctions he faces will not be the kind of severe sanctions he most fears. Again, it also signals to Xi Jinping and to China that they can go for the jugular in the future in Taiwan and not fear those kind of crippling sanctions. Unfortunately, I do think that there could be cyber attacks against American allies and interests, and maybe even against America itself. Remember, Maria, last year it was Russian-affiliated hackers who attacked the Colonial Pipeline, and there was barely any response from America against that attack. That, again, simply signaled weakness and hesitancy by the Biden administration to Vladimir Putin. That's one of those long trains of concessions and moments of weakness over the last year that has brought us to this point.
Well, let me move on to ask you about the response on COVID-19, because we still have yet to see evidence that Joe Biden has raised the origins of this pandemic to Xi Jinping. So there, too, we're showing weakness. China will not allow the investigators in. And it's almost 2 years to the day that you appeared on this program with me and said what was obvious, the circumstantial evidence. You gave us real important intelligence that day in terms of why it was impossible that it was a wet market and likely leaked from that Wuhan lab. Assess the situation on COVID today and what you would do if the Senate takes the majority in that regard.
Yeah, Maria, 2 years ago, after we had that conversation, liberal media outlets like the Washington Post attacked us for spreading misinformation and discredited conspiracy theories. And now almost any informed observer knows that this virus almost certainly came from those laboratories. That was 2 years ago at the very start of the pandemic when I was saying that. It remains the case today. I am doubtful that China will ever open up. I'm doubtful that any of the evidence in China still exists. I think it's been destroyed, or persons knowledgeable have probably been disappeared, if not killed. But there's a lot that we can do here in America. When Republicans win back the Congress later this year, of course, our first priority is going to be doing things like getting inflation and crime under control. But oversight is an important constitutional responsibility for Congress. One top priority for oversight will be getting answers from Francis Collins and Tony Fauci and what their agency was doing to fund very dangerous research inside those Wuhan labs.
Yeah. Senator, before you go, all of this questionable response from Joe Biden leads me to question what will happen this upcoming week when we have truckers planning to do a convoy in the U.S. Let me show you their route, because we know that the People's Convoy, taking a page out of the Canadian truckers' route, will start on the 22nd. This upcoming week, they will start in California. They will truck through Ohio. They are going to end on March 6th in Washington. And there are some expectations that they may be there for Joe Biden's State of the Union. How will this administration respond to the truckers who are merely pushing back on mandates for this vaccine?
Maria, I expect not very well, given how they've encouraged Justin Trudeau's administration in Canada to respond and what Justin Trudeau himself has done. You know, when it was radical liberal environmentalists shutting down pipelines in Canada, Justin Trudeau called for patience and dialogue. Now that it's conservative truckers protesting his COVID-19 mandates, he's invoking emergency powers and using authorities that are typically designed for terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda. And Joe Biden and liberals in America are cheering them on. Remember, these are the very same liberals, of course, that marched in the streets and celebrated the BLM rioters in 2020 that caused billions of dollars of damage with rioting and arson and looting that resulted in many deaths. Whereas these Canadian truckers have shut down some traffic and set up bouncy houses in their capital city. The hypocrisy of these liberals really knows no bounds.
It's pretty incredible that Trudeau is invoking emergency powers on this. Senator, it's great to have you on this program and certainly your leadership. Thanks very much, sir.
Thank you, Maria.